The Galactic Coalition's Grand Hall buzzed with anticipation. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy had gathered to discuss the fragile peace talks between the Trikarn Empire and the Zeltan Dominion. Tensions had been high for years, and this mission was their last chance to prevent an all-out war. At the center of the room stood Princess Tylara of the Zeltan Dominion, her shimmering, iridescent skin reflecting the golden lights above. Her presence commanded respect, but her next words stunned the room into silence. "I will only travel aboard a human vessel, piloted by a human captain," she declared, her voice calm but unyielding. The delegates erupted into murmurs of disbelief. Humans were the youngest members of the coalition, often seen as reckless and unpredictable. Choosing the human ship for such a critical mission seemed absurd. The coalition's representative, an older Arcanian with 6 glowing eyes, stepped forward. "Princess Tylara," he began diplomatically, "surely you would prefer a vessel from your own fleet. Humans are not known for their subtlety." Tylara's expression hardened. "I have made my decision. Human ships are unpredictable, yes, but their captains have a resourcefulness unmatched in this galaxy. If we are to succeed, I need someone who can think outside the boundaries of protocol." Her reasoning left no room for argument. The Council reluctantly agreed, and soon, Captain Jack Travers of Earth's Space Corps was summoned to the Coalition's base. Captain Jack Travers was the exact opposite of what anyone expected for such an important mission. He strode into the meeting room in his worn leather jacket, his hair a mess of dark curls, and a smirk that bordered on arrogance. His ship, the Stellar Vagabond, was equally unconventional, a patched-together relic that had survived more scrapes than most starships in the fleet. "So," Jack drawled, looking at the gathered delegates and then at Tylara, "you're the one who asked for me." "I'm flattered. But I gotta say, Princess, I'm not exactly a fan of royal babysitting gigs." Tylara's violet eyes narrowed. "Captain Travers, this mission is no mere gig. It is a matter of intergalactic peace." Jack leaned against the table, unfazed. "Right. And you think my rusty bucket of bolts and I are the best for the job. I chose your ship because humans defy expectations," Tylara said firmly. "And you are known for thinking on your feet. I need someone who doesn't follow the rules blindly." Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. "All right, Princess. You've got my attention, but don't think I'm doing this out of loyalty to your fancy titles. This is about keeping the galaxy from falling apart. Deal." "Deal," Tylara replied, though her tone was issier than the vacuum of space. As the Stellar Vagabond prepared to depart, tensions between its human crew and the Zeltan envoy were already running high. The Zeltans were precise and formal, while the humans were laid back and improvisational. Tylara, used to rigid protocols, found Jack's relaxed leadership style baffling. "Why is your ship so disorganized?" Tylara asked Jack, watching a crew member juggle tools instead of working on a console. "Disorganized," Jack chuckled. "I call it efficient chaos. It's how we humans roll." Tylara's disapproval was palpable, but before she could respond, the ship's alarms blared. The control panel lit up with warnings. "Captain," shouted Terra, Jack's first mate, "we've got an explosion on the docking bay. Looks like sabotage." Jack's smirk vanished instantly. He barked orders to his crew, his easygoing demeanor replaced by sharp focus. Tylara observed in silence, impressed despite herself at how quickly the humans shifted gears. As the ship lifted off amidst the chaos, Jack turned to Tylara. "Looks like someone doesn't want us to make it to this peace summit. Buckle up, Princess. Things are about to get messy." For the first time, Tylara felt a flicker of doubt. Maybe she had underestimated just how dangerous this mission would be. The Stellar Vagabond rocketed through space, its engines roaring as it left the spaceport behind. Princess Tylara, now on board, couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and unease. She had never traveled in a ship like this before. Everything about it was different from the sleek, polished ships of her people. The hum of the engine was louder, the control panels less refined, and the ship's interior felt lived in. She stood at the observation window, looking out at the swirling expanse of stars. Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind her. "Princess, you're gonna want to take a seat. This ride's gonna get bumpy." Jack's voice echoed from across the bridge. Scylla turned to see him lounging in his captain's chair, looking far too comfortable for someone about to travel into the unknown. His crew was busy making adjustments, and the atmosphere was a world away from the formal environments Scylla was used to. The humans were moving quickly, but with an ease that suggested they were used to unpredictability. "I'm fine," she said coolly, though she wasn't entirely convinced. Without warning, the ship shuddered, throwing her off balance. She grabbed the edge of the console in front of her to steady herself. Jack didn't flinch. His crew had clearly done this many times before. "We've got incoming," Tara, the first mate, called from the controls. "Pirates. They're in our path." Scylla's eyes widened. "Pirates." Jack glanced at her, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Yeah, welcome to the real galaxy." The ship jerked again as laser fire struck the shields, and the view outside shifted. A pirate ship, sleek and dark, was closing in fast. It looked like an ambush. Scylla gripped the seat, her pulse racing. Pirates didn't follow any rules, and they certainly didn't care about peace treaties. "Are we going to fight them?" she asked, her voice barely controlled. "You bet we are," Jack answered, his eyes hardening. "This isn't just about you anymore, Princess. It's about survival." Scylla watched as Jack's crew scrambled to their stations. They moved with purpose and speed, as if this was all routine. She had expected the humans to be chaotic, but their efficiency in the face of danger surprised her. Maybe Jack's relaxed attitude wasn't as careless as she had thought. "Brace yourself," Jack warned, gripping the controls. "We're going to make a run for it." The stellar vagabond lurched forward, suddenly gaining speed. The pirate ship fired again, but Jack was already weaving the ship in and out of asteroids, using the debris as cover. Scylla's heart pounded in her chest as the ship darted through narrow gaps, barely avoiding collisions. She had to admit, the human captain knew how to fly. "Impressive," she murmured, still gripping the seat. "You haven't seen anything yet," Jack replied, his voice a mix of focus and thrill. The pirate ship closed in again, but Jack was ready. He slammed a button, and the stellar vagabond shot forward with a burst of speed, narrowly dodging another blast. Then, with a twist of the controls, Jack launched the ship into a steep dive, throwing the pirates off course. The chase continued for what felt like hours, with the pirate ship barely keeping up. Finally, Jack made a sharp turn and aimed straight for a nearby asteroid field. The pirate ship, unable to match the maneuver, was left behind, and Jack quickly dropped the ship behind the cover of an asteroid cluster. "We lost them," Tara said, sounding relieved. Scylla let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. She hadn't been sure they'd make it, but the humans had done it. "See, I told you we'd be fine," Jack said with a grin, swiveling his chair to face her. Scylla frowned. "That was reckless. You nearly got us killed." Jack just laughed. "You'll get used to it. In this galaxy, it's all about thinking fast and taking risks. That's what humans do best." Scylla could feel her thoughts shifting. The way the humans handled danger was different, much different, from how her people would have responded. But perhaps there was a certain wisdom in their approach, a kind of audacity that allowed them to thrive in the chaos of space. She turned away from him and stared out the window again, but this time she wasn't just thinking about the mission. She found herself wondering about this human captain. There was more to him than met the eye. The stellar vagabond coasted through space, its engines humming softly as the tension from the pirate encounter slowly faded. The crew had settled back into their usual rhythm, but Princess Scylla couldn't shake the feeling that things were far from normal. The humans had faced danger with an ease that left her both impressed and unsettled. They didn't follow the rules, and that made her uneasy. She stood by the observation window once more, her mind racing. Despite herself, she found herself watching Jack as he barked orders to his crew. His voice, confident and calm, seemed to command the room. He wasn't just a reckless pilot. He was a leader. But did he understand the weight of the mission they were on? "Princess," Terra called out, breaking Silara's thoughts. "We're approaching the Xelton border. You might want to get ready." Silara nodded, turning to face the bridge. She had heard stories about the Xelton territories. Mysterious, dangerous, and fiercely guarded. The peace talks depended on her safe arrival, but she had no idea how the humans planned to get her there without attracting unwanted attention. Jack, sensing her concern, met her gaze. "Relax, Princess. We're not going to make it easy for anyone to stop us." Silara raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do you intend to do that?" Jack grinned, a spark of mischief in his eyes. "Trust me, you'll see." As they neared the Xelton border, the stars ahead seemed to shift into a hazy fog. Terra's fingers danced over the controls, and the ship's sensors went into overdrive, scanning for any signs of an incoming threat. Silara noticed how the humans moved in sync. Every crew member had a task, and every movement was precise. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. The ship's alarms blared again, and the control panel lit up with warnings. A fleet of Xelton warships had appeared out of nowhere, their sharp, angular designs cutting through the void of space. Silara stiffened. "Is this normal?" she asked, her voice tense. "Not exactly," Jack replied, standing up from his chair and walking over to the control panel. "But it's not the first time we've had company." He pressed a button, and the ship's shields flared to life, just as the first salvo of laser fire struck them. The stellar vagabond shuddered from the impact, but Jack didn't flinch. Instead, he spun the controls, sending the ship into a sharp, evasive maneuver. The Xelton ships pursued, their fire relentless. Silara felt a sense of urgency flood through her veins as the ship swerved left and right, narrowly dodging incoming blasts. It was clear the humans weren't going to outrun the Xeltons, not like this. "Captain," Terra called out, her voice tight with focus, "we need to get to the stealth zone. We can't keep dodging forever." Jack nodded. "You heard her. Hold on tight, Princess." Before Silara could react, the ship jerked forward again, plunging deeper into the dense asteroid field that lay ahead. The Xelton ships followed, but they were slower, less agile than the stellar vagabond. "We're gonna make a run for the black hole," Jack muttered to himself, more to reassure his crew than anything else. "A black hole." Silara's voice was filled with disbelief. "Are you out of your mind?" Jack flashed a grin at her. "Just hold on." Without warning, the stellar vagabond lurched forward at breakneck speed, heading straight for the swirling mass of darkness ahead. Silara's heart raced, but she had no choice but to trust the human captain. The ship sped toward the black hole, its gravitational pull growing stronger with every passing second. Behind them, the Xelton ships struggled to keep up, their own sensors barely able to lock onto the moving target. "This is crazy," Silara shouted, her voice rising in panic. Jack's grip tightened on the controls. "Maybe, but it's the only shot we've got." As the stellar vagabond approached the event horizon, the crew braced for the unknown. The ship was now moving faster than ever, too fast for the Xelton warships to follow. "Now," Jack shouted. With a final push, the ship shot forward, using the black hole's gravitational field to slingshot around it. The Xelton ships, unable to match the maneuver, were left far behind. The stellar vagabond soared through the darkness of space, the black hole now behind them. Silara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That," she said, her voice quiet but full of awe, "was the most insane thing I've ever done." Jack smirked. "Welcome to human space travel, Princess." Silara couldn't help but smile. Maybe these humans weren't as reckless as she'd first thought. Maybe they had a kind of brilliance she hadn't fully understood. "Just don't do that again," she said, trying to sound stern, though she was still trying to calm her racing heart. Jack chuckled. "No promises." The stellar vagabond glided through space, the echoes of their narrow escape still fresh in Silara's mind. The Jelton warships had been left far behind, but she could still feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She'd been on countless royal expeditions, but nothing compared to the chaos and thrill of traveling with humans. Hilara stood by the observation window, staring at the swirling stars ahead. The black hole they had narrowly escaped was far behind them now, but the rush of the experience still lingered in her thoughts. The human captain, Jack, had done something she never would have imagined. He had risked everything to escape a direct confrontation, using the unpredictable forces of space itself. The crew, however, seemed unfazed. Tara and the others were already back to their tasks, working as though they hadn't just narrowly escaped death. The humans were so calm in the face of danger, a trait Silara found both fascinating and unnerving. Jack entered the bridge, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of victory. "Well, Princess," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "That was quite the ride, wasn't it?" Silara turned to face him, a frown still on her face. "You nearly killed us all. That was reckless." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You didn't think it was exciting." She crossed her arms, trying to maintain her royal composure. "It wasn't exciting. It was dangerous." "Same thing in my book," Jack replied with a grin. "You're not in the palace anymore, Princess. Space is wild, and sometimes you've got to make the wildest moves to stay alive." Silara was silent for a moment, considering his words. There was a wisdom in what he said, though she hated to admit it. Her people had always relied on caution, on careful planning. But Jack and his crew had taught her something. Sometimes, the best way forward was to take risks. Before she could respond, a sudden alarm cut through the air, sharp and insistent. The red lights flashing on the control panels brought a sense of urgency to the bridge. Tara's voice broke through the tension. "Captain, we've got company. A Jelton scout ship is tracking us. They must have followed our trail from the black hole." Jack's face hardened. "I thought we'd shaken them off," he muttered under his breath. "Guess we'll find out how good their tech really is." Silara's heart skipped a beat. "The Jeltons. Again. Can we outrun them?" she asked, stepping closer to the controls. "We're going to try," Jack replied, his voice calm but tense. "Tara, drop the speed. Let's see how they react." Silara watched as the human crew went to work. Tara and the others adjusted the ship's settings, making quick calculations and pressing buttons with practiced precision. There was no panic, no chaos, just a focused, almost casual determination. The Jelton scout ship, a sleek and formidable vessel, came into view on the sensors. It was fast, far faster than the stellar vagabond. But Jack wasn't about to give up without a fight. He grabbed the controls, and with a flick of his wrist, the ship lurched into motion. The crew braced themselves as Jack steered them toward a dense asteroid field ahead. The Jelton ship, though agile, would have trouble navigating the treacherous maze of rocks. "We're not outrunning them," Jack said, his voice steady as he adjusted the ship's course. "But we can make it harder for them to hit us." Silara's grip tightened on the armrest. She didn't like it, but she understood what Jack was doing. The asteroid field would give them a chance to shake the scout ship off their trail. The stellar vagabond shot forward, weaving in and out of the massive asteroids. The ship shook as the rocks scraped by, but Jack's skillful maneuvers kept them safe, just barely. Behind them, the Jelton ship followed, its weapons charging up, ready to fire. "Keep going, Captain," Silara said, her voice firm despite the fear creeping into her chest. "We can't let them catch us." Jack shot her a quick glance, his grin never faltering. "That's the spirit." They weaved through the asteroid field, the Jelton ship staying hot on their tail. Zylara couldn't help but admire Jack's ability to stay calm under pressure. But as the asteroid field grew denser, she realized that they might be taking things too far. "We're pushing it," Terra warned. "This field's about to get a lot more dangerous." Jack's eyes narrowed, his focus sharper than ever. "Then we'll make it more dangerous for them, too." He jerked the controls, sending the stellar vagabond into a steep dive. The Zelton ship followed, but its pursuit was getting more desperate. The ship was now speeding through a maze of massive rocks, barely avoiding collisions. Zylara could hear the shrill whine of the engines as they pushed past their limits. She had never felt so vulnerable in her life. "Brace for impact," Jack shouted, his voice unwavering. "We're going to make a break for it." The stellar vagabond was now in a quiet stretch of space, far from the Jelton scout ship and the asteroid field they had barely escaped. The sudden shift from danger to calm left Zylara with a strange feeling. Her heart was still pounding, but her mind was slowly catching up. She glanced around the bridge, watching the crew work as if nothing had happened. The humans were used to this kind of chaos, but for Zylara, this was still all new. Jack sat in the captain's chair, looking over his controls with a thoughtful expression. His focus was sharp, but there was a sense of relief in his posture. He had done it again. Led them out of danger, just like he promised. Terra, too, seemed calm as she typed into the terminal, reviewing data, while the other crew members were scattered around, talking in low voices, discussing their next steps. Zylara, however, wasn't as calm. She paced across the bridge, trying to make sense of everything. Her people had always been about control, caution, and strategy. But these humans, they thrived on chaos, on taking risks. They moved quickly, thinking on their feet, and in those split seconds of decision, they had managed to do what no other species could. They had outsmarted the Zeltons, escaped certain destruction, and continued forward with barely a hitch. She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. She couldn't keep thinking like this. She was a princess, responsible for the peace talks, for the future of her people. She couldn't let herself get swept away by the excitement and dangers of human space travel. But she had to admit it, the humans were something else. Jack turned to her, breaking her thoughts. "You're thinking too hard, princess. Relax. We're safe now." "I don't know how you do it," she replied, her voice soft, but laced with admiration. "You risk everything without even blinking." Jack leaned back in his chair, his grin never fading. "It's called living on the edge. But I've learned over the years that sometimes it's the only way to survive out here." Zylara considered his words for a moment. "But at what cost? You've already put your crew in danger. And now we're still a long way from the peace talks." "We'll get there," Jack said confidently. "You're not the only one with a mission. We'll get you to the Zelton capital, and we'll make sure you get there in one piece." Zylara wanted to argue, to say that the humans didn't fully understand the gravity of her mission. But looking at Jack, she realized something. He understood. He might not wear a crown or carry the weight of an entire planet on his shoulders, but Jack carried his own burdens, his own code, and that was enough. Before she could speak again, Terra interrupted, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from the Jelton forces," Terra said, looking up from her console. "They want to talk." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Talk? After what just happened?" "They're offering a ceasefire," Terra replied. "But there's a catch." "Of course there is," Jack muttered under his breath. "What's the catch?" Terra paused, glancing at her screen. "They want to meet in neutral space. They'll agree to the peace talks, but only if you come alone, princess. No backup." Zylara felt her pulse quicken. The Zeltons were trying to isolate her, to make her vulnerable. It was a trick she'd seen before, but she also knew that if she didn't take the opportunity, the war might continue and her people could suffer. "What do you think?" she asked Jack, her voice barely above a whisper. She had already made up her mind, but she wanted to hear his opinion. Jack didn't hesitate. It's a trap, but you've got to go. If you back out now, they'll see you as weak, and the negotiations will be pointless. Sci-Fi took a deep breath. She had come this far, and she wouldn't back down now. The fate of her people was on the line. Prepare the ship, she said, her voice steady. We'll go, but we'll be ready for anything. Jack gave her a sharp look, impressed by her resolve. I like the way you think. With that, the crew sprang into action. They prepared for the meeting, ensuring that every detail was accounted for. The Zeltans may have wanted to isolate Sci-Fi, but they wouldn't get the chance to take her by surprise. She would be ready. As the stellar vagabond set course for the meeting point, Sci-Fi sat back in her chair, her thoughts clear. She didn't need to be a princess to know when to fight. She would go into this meeting on her own terms, and if the Zeltans had any tricks up their sleeves, she would be ready to outsmart them, just like the humans had outsmarted her. The next chapter of her journey had just begun.